What's up folks, Mike for CMCC Builds here with video number 5 in the Optimizing Critical Role series. Caleb Widogast, formerly Bren Aldrich Ermendrud, played by Liam O'Brien. First, a bit of housekeeping. I wanted to let everyone know that if you want to support the channel and get some cool perks in the process, I have a Patreon link below. You can click that and check out your options. Any support would be appreciated and amazing. But you know what's more amazing than that? You're amazing. The channel has been growing pretty fast and I'm at a bit of a crossroads because the foundational videos, the ones that I started the channel to make, fantasy characters, superheroes, etc., those builds don't perform very well for the most part. My optimization and critical role builds, however, break records each time I publish them, and they also happen to be considerably easier to produce for a variety of reasons. The plan is to let my Patreon subscribers voice their opinions and provide an additional data point about what builds I should focus on moving forward. That won't be the only data point, as I'll continue to monitor video performance, subscribers, etc., and use everything together to dictate future build choices. So technically, if you watch my videos, comment, and join my Patreon, you'll have multiple ways to have your voice heard. If none of that intrigues you and you just want to click the occasional video that sounds interesting to you, that's cool too. Okay, enough of that. Back to Caleb. If you saw my not video, you may remember I mentioned a new style of build, something I haven't seen before. There are still some optimization changes I'm going to make, but for the most part when it comes to wizard builds, if you max out intelligence and go 20 straight levels of wizard, you'll probably be okay, because, you're a wizard. But the big changes, the brand new direction we're going to take Caleb, will come from an optional rule in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, changing your subclass, which allows players, with DM approval, to change your subclass when you would normally gain a new subclass feature. When you make this change, you choose another subclass that belongs to your class and replace all your old subclass features with the new features of the new subclass that are for your new level and lower. When this came out, there was a lot of debate about how this would be used and if too frequent use would cause issues with the DM and the rest of the table, but I believe I found the perfect use for this that goes hand in hand with the character's story progression and hopefully won't interfere with gameplay and your table mate's ability to enjoy the game. So with that, let's firebolt our way into the build. For race, Liam chose Variant Human for Caleb, and we will too. This does pose a problem for the ability scores because I don't know which scores he bumped with his racial ASIs. I'll make some assumptions there. For feat, Liam wanted to round off intelligence, so he chose a half feat. Makes perfect sense. The problem here is that before Tasha's, intelligence-based half feats weren't very good at all. Keen Mind gave us some funny moments as Liam terrorized Matt with "what time of day is it?" questions, but for actual in-game power and usefulness, this isn't a quality half feat, especially now. The big four, Fey Touched, Telekinetic, Telepathic, and Shadow Touched, in order of power level, are all reasonable picks here. Fey Touch takes the top honors for me because 2 free castings of a level 1 and 2 spell is just great. Misty Step is a great spell that is useful from levels 1 to 20, and Gift of Alacrity or Bless are both strong options that you can choose with that level 1 spell. But because of Jester's connection to the Traveler and the Feywild, I'm leaning toward my second choice, Telekinetic. Yes, I understand that this feat fits Imogen even better than Caleb, but the bonus action shove that this allows works extremely well for a character like Caleb who has very little to do with his bonus action, so this will give a +1 to intelligence and a visible mage hand, and the bonus action telekinetic shove, which works great when you have 2 clerics who both use spells like Spirit Guardians. When someone wants to escape, you can use your bonus action to shove them right back in. This of course works for any hazard your party throws out there. For background, we'll go ahead and keep Haunted 1. Looks like both Liam and Ashley wanted to be Batman for campaign 2, I guess. For ability scores, because of the 2+1s that Variant Humans get, I can't be certain which stats Liam placed those ASIs in, but I can make some educated guesses. I'm going to assume he rolled a 16, 16, 15, 14, 12, and 10. The 10 goes to strength. Caleb's a wizard, he can dump strength. 10 isn't really a dump stat. Now for a wizard without access to half plate, dexterity becomes an important stat. Liam putting a 12 here wasn't a great idea. I'd put the 16 here. With mage armor, a 16 AC becomes completely acceptable. Constitution, put the 15 here and bump that with your ASI to a 16. This helps a lot with both concentration checks and additional hit points. Wizards have the lowest hit dice, so having a solid con is very important. Intelligence, use the other 16 with the racial ASI and the +1 from Telekinetic. That bumps intelligence to 18. Great for a level 2 character. Wisdom will be 14 instead of Liam's 16. Still solid for a non-wisdom based class. And Charisma will be 12. The 16 charisma that Liam used seems both wasted and uncharacteristic of Caleb. I'm sure someone will comment that Caleb was persuasive and eloquent, and after his trauma that morphed into more of a deceptive or manipulative personality, but in practice he was reserved, withdrawn, self-hating, even dour. 12 charisma with proficiency in the deception and persuasion skills works fine for this character archetype. For class, we're going to start with Wizard. Look, if you want to make the most powerful wizard possible, taking 1 level in Artificer at level 1 for half plate proficiency, Constitution save proficiency, and no loss of spell slot progression is the way to go. In fact, the Articron build that uses the Chronergy Wizard subclass is arguably the most powerful build in the game. I struggled with whether I should do this, but in the end I decided against going this route for straight Wizard. It just fits better with the history and character Liam and Matt put together. The question then becomes, which arcane tradition should we take? Liam chose Transmutation. I'm not entirely sure what the in-story reason for this was. If you do, let me know in the comments. But the meta reason for this decision was pretty clearly because of the not Veth transformation. But here's the thing. Fire, specifically fire spells, are a primary detail in Caleb's history. And not only that, it's a huge part of Liam's playstyle. He did some control and buffing, but he wasn't a god wizard by any means. There was a heavy focus on evocation spells in his playstyle. He cast Tiny Hut, yes that's an evocation spell, 124 times, Firebolt 94 times, Dancing Lights 70 times, Fireball 26 times, Scorching Ray 21 times, Magic Missile 20 times, Chromatic Orb 12 times, Wall of Fire 9 times, Web of Fire 8 times, Acid Arrow, Burning Hands, Lightning Bolt, and Cone of Cold a combined 11 times. You get the point. That's a lot of evocation spells, which is why I'm going to suggest Caleb takes the School of Evocation Arcane Tradition at level 2. And having an evocation wizard that's traumatized by evocation spells he casts adds a touch of irony that I really like. And the evocation subclass features, Sculpt Spells and Potent Cantrip at 2 and 6 both work well for Liam's playstyle. With Sculpt Spells, Liam could toss a Fireball into the mix without worrying about hurting his own party. And with Potent Cantrip, those save-based cantrips would do half damage on a save. This means that Caleb needs to rely a bit less on Firebolt and instead use something like the very solid Create Bonfire, which works amazing with force movement options like Telekinetic Shove, or even Toll of the Dead for a ranged save option. At level 4, maxing out Intelligence as Liam did is a good idea. With the ASI feat at level 8, Liam's choice of Warcaster was also a solid pick. Advantage on concentration checks is strong, and the ability to use spells on opportunity attacks is nice. The thing is, when you're a squishy wizard, you won't have very many of those. And without proficiency in shields, the likelihood of using the second clause of Warcaster is very small. So the feat isn't as strong here as other builds, but it's useful enough to be worth taking. Going right through level 9, I want to highlight some strong spells that Caleb didn't use and probably should have. Rather than Dancing Lights, the Light spell is significantly better because it doesn't require concentration. Minor Illusion is probably the best wizard cantrip, so it's a must grab, even if others in your party have the spell. Its out of combat utility is amazing, and in combat it can provide cover, block lines of sight, and has plenty of other uses. It's just a great cantrip. At level 1, Caleb had pretty much all the good spells, but Fog Cloud would have been a nice addition, along with Silvery Barbs if it were available at the time. At level 2, Liam cast Mirror Image, Flaming Sphere, and Levitate a combined 5 times. He should have used Mirror Image nearly every combat, and certainly every difficult combat. Flaming Sphere would have made okay use of his concentration and bonus action, and Levitate would have done wonders to help his survivability, especially at lower levels. But there are 2 glaring holes in spell selection, the lack of Misty Step and Web in his spellbook. For a character who relies so heavily on teleportation spells later in campaign, it would have made perfect sense to have Misty Step for those lower levels. And Web is one of the best second level spells and the wizard's best control spell at this level. This is a must grab for Caleb. And finally, Vortex Warp is an incredibly strong spell, but it wasn't available at the time of campaign 2. For level 3 spells, Liam casts Slow 20 times and Fear 2 times. That should be exactly opposite. Slow is an okay spell, but Fear is a fantastic level 3 spell. Hypnotic Pattern, another fantastic control spell at this level. Liam used Haste quite a bit as well, and Haste just isn't a good spell. It's terrible to cast on yourself, but thankfully Liam was smart enough to cast it on Bo most of the time. But even then, if you lose concentration on the spell, you've just cost your table mate an entire turn. Pretty much all uses of Slow and Haste would have benefited from a casting of Hypnotic Pattern or Fear instead. And thematically, I like those spells better for Caleb than Slow or Haste. Liam's choices for 4th level spells are pretty solid. Polymorph and Banishment are very good level 4 spells. Dimension Door and Greater Invisibility would have been quality additions as well. It's at this point that Caleb really ramps up his transmutation research in preparation for Nott's transition and his creation of the Widogast transmogrification spell And at level 10, just when Evokers get their excellent level 10 subclass feature, Empowered Evocation, that works wonders with Magic Missile, Caleb would forego that power jump, knowing full well what he's giving up, to transition his focus to the School of Transmutation. With this switch, all of Caleb's subclass features would switch to Transmutation. He would get that level 2 ability Minor Alchemy, the excellent level 6 feature Transmuter Stone, and at this level, level 10, the Shape Changer subclass feature, which allows Polymorph to be cast without using a spell slot as long as the beast has a challenge rating of 1 or lower. Fortunately, Giant Eagles have a CR of 1, which is why we saw Liam use the spell so much to change into an eagle. One note on Polymorph: unless it's an absolute emergency, don't cast the spell on yourself to turn into a T-Rex or a giant ape and rush into melee like Liam did so many times. Every single time that ape gets hit, you have to make a concentration check or lose concentration on the Polymorph spell. And even with the Transmuter Stone, Con Proficiency, and Warcaster, you're going to lose concentration at some point, which is a complete waste of the spell. Cast Polymorph on injured allies. When an ally is at like 10 health, cast this on them, bump them up to 157 hit points with a very solid multi-attack, and when the giant ape gets hit this time, no con checks. That ape can absorb all 157 hit points, which is just massive when a party member is very low on health. Caleb will continue with the School of Transmutation through level 11 when he transforms Not into her original Veth form, and through level 12 where he gets an ASI or feat. Here I would take Alert. This gives Caleb a massive bump to initiative. Where the original Caleb had a very mediocre initiative of just 1, this would bump this version of Caleb to an 8 initiative. At some point I'll have a separate video on the importance of initiative, but let's just say that it's incredibly important for all characters, as it potentially gives you free rounds against your enemies. But initiative is even more important for spellcasters, especially spellcasters that use area of effect spells for control or damage. Why is that so important? For a few reasons. 1, enemies tend to be bunched up at the start of combat, so AoE spells are more likely to hit a higher number of enemies. 2, if you go before your team, you don't have to worry about allies getting caught in the crossfire of your spells. A lot of AoE spells affect allies and enemies alike. And 3, you want to set up your allies for success. Casting Web on a group of enemies and restraining them means that your allies now have advantage to hit those restrained enemies. If you go last, like Caleb so often did, and Liam seemed to like that for some reason, then you've missed an entire round of advantage for your team. On top of that, restrained enemies have disadvantage, so that's an entire round of disadvantaged enemy attacks you may have missed. Caleb needs to go first as often as possible. Now he has a real shot to do that. Now at level 14, Wizards get their final subclass feature, and here Caleb is going to switch his Arcane Tradition once again. This time from the School of Transmutation to Chronergy magic. Having spent much of Campaign 2 learning from Essek and eventually becoming romantically involved with him, as early as episode 62, Essek agreed to tutor a curious Caleb in Dunamancy, from which Chronergy, the magical manipulation of time, and Graviturgy, the magical manipulation of matter, spring. It's completely within reason that Caleb would learn enough to switch to the Chronergy School of Magic. But why would he want to? Besides the fact that this is potentially, well, almost certainly the most powerful subclass in D&D. In story, we need to talk about Caleb's plan, which wasn't fully revealed until the final episode of Campaign 2. As we all know, Caleb killed his parents. His memory was modified by Trent Ickathon, making Caleb believe his parents were traitors to the Empire, and as a test of loyalty, he burned his parents alive in their house before going mad from their dying screams. Intense stuff. To rectify this, once Caleb had the fake memories wiped away, he planned to become powerful enough to go into the past, disguised as his younger self, and convince his parents to leave with him for Tal'Dorei, leaving 2 bodies from his Vault of Amber behind. He would then create a programmed illusion of his parents screaming and watch invisibly as his younger self set the house on fire. He would then escort his parents to Tal'Dorei with enough gems to start a life there, and in about 20 years, he would join them. To play with time to this degree, Caleb would have had to intensely study Chronergy before mastering it to pull off this feat. For levels 14 and beyond, this would be Caleb's focus, secretly, during the campaign and outwardly post-campaign. Of course, when Essek offered to help Caleb turn the plan into a reality, Caleb instead disintegrated everything in the temporal dock chamber where he was studying this time magic. It's at this point Caleb left this behind to teach at Veth's summer camp for young adventurers and the Solstice Academy. I'm guessing this would mostly be general or subclassless magic, and Chronergy would largely be left behind in Caleb's mind. Either way, at level 16, Caleb would get his final ASI or feat, and here I would take Resilient Wisdom to shore up those wisdom saves. Rather than simply bump wisdom as Liam did, proficiency in saves does much more than the general +1 an ASI bump would do. even if that proficiency comes without any additional modifier increase. Since this brings wisdom to an odd number, I would likely have planned to use the gem tattoos Orly offered to the party to increase wisdom by 1, so this would have rounded off Caleb's wisdom at a very solid 16 with proficiency. I just wanted to highlight one additional spell. I know people are probably wondering about simulacrum shenanigans or broken magic jar mechanics, but I'm going to assume Liam intentionally chose not to break the game by not abusing those spells, but he should have taken contingency at level 11. It's just too good not to have, and it's the type of spell that lends itself to crafty, thoughtful planning that I think fits perfectly with a character like Caleb. I know this is quite a different type of character build, jumping around subclasses like we did here, but as I hope I illustrated, I think it fits perfectly with Caleb's story and character arcs, while also fitting in well from a power and optimization standpoint. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks everyone, see you next time.